The great hall of Nexus Prime stretched out like a metal ocean. 847 different species sat in floating seats that moved slowly around the center stage. Some had 4 arms, others had tentacles instead of legs. A few breathed different gases and sat in special glass boxes. But they all listened to the same voice. Ambassador Kale Oren stood at the center podium. His blue skin glowed under the bright lights. The crystals on his forehead sparkled as he spoke. His people, the Zephyrians, had been part of the Galactic Council for over 300 years. Today, he talked about something that most young species had never seen. Humans. "My fellow council members," Kale said, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive room. "We gather today to discuss the human question. For 150 years, the species called humanity has hidden in their home system. They speak to no one. They trade with no one. They help no one." A low rumble of voices filled the air. Many species nodded their heads or made sounds of agreement. In the back rows, younger delegates whispered to each other. Most of them had never seen a human. They only knew stories. Kale continued. "But 3 months ago, our friends in the Hegemony Alliance sent ships to Earth. They wanted to see if humans were still there. They wanted to know if Earth was still strong or if it had grown weak." An old creature in the front row shifted in his seat. Counselor Thane Veltar was over 400 years old. His people, the Kalani, lived much longer than most species. His gray skin was covered in scars from many wars. He remembered things that others had forgotten. He remembered humans. "The hegemony ships found something interesting," Kale said. "Earth still has people on it. They still have space stations around their planet. But when our ships got close to study them, the humans attacked." This was not true, and Veltar knew it, but he said nothing yet. "The humans destroyed 3 hegemony scout ships." Kale lied. "They killed brave soldiers who were only trying to learn about them. This proves what we have always known. Humans are violent. They are dangerous. They cannot be trusted." More voices rose from the crowd. Some species called out in anger. Others demanded action. A few younger delegates even suggested attacking Earth before humans could attack them. But Veltar remembered the real story. 3 months ago, hegemony ships had not gone to Earth to explore. They had gone to test human defenses. They had fired on a space station full of families. They had killed children and teachers and doctors. The humans had only defended themselves. "The question before us today is simple," Kale said. "Should we act first? Should we remove this threat before it grows larger?" Kale, too, was. Kale, 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 Kale. In the back of the great hall, a young Taraxian delegate raised her hand. "Ambassador Oren," she called out. "I have read the old histories. They say humans once fought in the Great Liberation War. They say humans helped free many worlds from slavery. Why did they become our enemies? Why not?" Kale's blue skin grew darker. He did not like this question. "The humans you read about were different," he said. "That was over 150 years ago. Those humans are dead. The ones alive now have been alone for too long. They have grown strange and violent." Veltar finally stood up. His old body moved slowly, but his voice was still strong. "Young delegate," he said to the Taraxian, "I was there during the Great Liberation War. I saw humans fight. I remember what really happened." ADC. The great hall grew quiet. Everyone knew that Veltar was old enough to remember. Everyone knew he did not lie. "Humans did not come to our galaxy as conquerors," Veltar said. "They came as refugees. Slavers had attacked their world. They were looking for help. But when they saw how much slavery existed in our galaxy, they decided to act." Kale tried to interrupt, But other species wanted to hear the old story. Human ships were smaller than ours, Veltar continued. Human weapons were weaker than ours. But humans fought differently than anyone else. They did not just attack enemy ships. They saved the slaves first. They freed entire worlds before they ever fired a shot at the people who owned those worlds. A Vraxian delegate, whose people had been freed by humans long ago, nodded his head. My grandfather was a slave, he said. Humans broke his chains. They gave him freedom. Yes, Veltar said. Humans won the Great Liberation War, not because they were the strongest. They won because they made friends with everyone they freed. Former slaves fought beside them. Freed worlds gave them food and fuel. In the end, half the galaxy stood with humanity against the slavers. Kale's crystals flashed angry red. That was the past, he said. What matters is now. Humans attacked hegemony ships 3 months ago. They are dangerous. No, Veltar said, his voice growing sad. Hegemony ships attacked a human space station. They killed 12,000 people. Most of them were children. The Great Hall exploded with noise. Some species shouted in anger at the hegemony. Others demanded proof. A few called Veltar a liar. But before anyone could speak again, a new voice came over the communication system. Nexus, Prime Control, the voice said. This is the Earthship Messenger. We request permission to address the Galactic Council. The Great Hall fell silent. No human ship had come to Nexus Prime in 150 years. No human had spoken to the Galactic Council since the day they announced they were leaving. Kale's blue skin turned almost white. Veltar sat down heavily in his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 400 years. At the edge of the system, a small gray ship waited for an answer. Inside that ship, Captain Sarah Chen checked her equipment one final time. She had been born on Earth. She had never seen aliens before except in pictures. But she had a job to do. Her government had sent her with a message. A simple message that would change everything. The communication system crackled again. Nexus Prime Control. Please respond. We have something to tell the Council. End quote. In the Great Hall, 847 species waited to hear what humanity had to say after 150 years of silence. The great doors of the Council Hall opened with a soft hiss. Captain Sarah Chen walked through them, wearing simple dark clothes. She had no weapons that anyone could see. She carried only a small device in her hand. Her brown hair was tied back in a basic style. Her dark eyes looked calm. But every alien in the room felt afraid. Chen was not very tall. She looked like she might be in her 30s. To most species, she seemed ordinary. But Counselor Veltar gripped the arms of his chair with old claws. His 400 years of life had taught him to recognize danger. This human woman was more dangerous than a fleet of warships. Not because she wanted to hurt anyone, but because of what she represented. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Chen said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the huge room. My name is Sarah Chen. I speak for the people of Earth. Ambassador Kale tried to take control of the meeting. Human, he said, his crystals flashing bright blue. You were not invited here. The Council has not recognized your right to speak. Chen turned to look at him. Her face showed no emotion. 3 months ago, ships flying hegemony flags entered the Sol system without permission. They fired on Orbital Platform 7. 12,043 people died. Most were children attending school on the platform. Others were families visiting the research labs. Her voice stayed calm and level. She spoke like someone reading from a shopping list. But her words made the huge room completely silent. The hegemony ships did not try to communicate, Chen continued. They did not ask permission to enter our system. They saw our platform, and they attacked it. When our defense ships responded, the hegemony vessels fled. General Korax Thule stood up from his seat near the center of the room. He was large even for his species. His people, the Brakari, were known for being warriors. Thick armor covered his body. Sharp spikes grew from his shoulders. The hegemony was conducting a legal reconnaissance mission, Korax said. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. Your people attacked our ships without warning. We defended ourselves. Chen turned to face the general. For a moment, she said nothing. When she spoke again, her voice was even quieter than before. General Thule, she said, would you like me to show the council the recordings from Platform 7? Korax's armor plates shifted nervously. Recordings can be faked. Yes, they can, Chen agreed. But these are real. They show hegemony ships opening fire on a school. They show children trying to reach escape pods. They show families being killed while they ate lunch in the observation deck. She held up the small device in her hand. I have the names of everyone who died. I have their ages. I have pictures of what they looked like before your ships turned them into floating debris. The room was so quiet that many species could hear their own hearts beating. Chen touched her device, and a hologram appeared in the air above the center stage. It showed a massive space station, with gardens visible through clear walls. Children could be seen playing in parks that hung in zero gravity. Families walked through shopping areas, filled with plants and small trees. Then the picture changed. Weapon fire tore through the station's hull. Air and water and people were sucked out into space. The children's playground became a field of twisted metal and broken glass. Kayla Park Elementary School, Chen said as the hologram showed a classroom full of empty desks. Teacher, Mrs. Hannah Kim, age 34. Students, 26 children between ages 6 and 8. We can. Do man. 10 can. The hologram changed again. Now, it showed the twisted remains of the classroom after the attack. All dead, Chen said simply. Some council members looked away from the hologram. Others made sounds of sadness or anger. A few younger species began crying. But General Korax was not moved. War has costs, he said. Civilians sometimes die. This is how the galaxy works. The strong take what they need. The weak should stay hidden, if they cannot defend themselves. Chen turned off the hologram. She looked around the great hall, meeting the eyes of as many species as she could. For 150 years, she said, humanity stayed in our home system. We watched the galaxy through sensors and communication devices. We saw the wars. We saw the slavery. We saw species like yours, General Thule, taking whatever you wanted from whoever was too weak to stop you. She walked closer to the center stage. Her footsteps echoed in the silent hall. We hoped that our absence would give you time to grow. We hoped that without humans involved in galactic politics, other species might learn to solve their problems without violence. We gave you 150 years to prove that you could be better than what we saw during the Liberation War. Chen stopped walking and looked directly at General Korax. 3 months ago, you gave us your answer. You chose to murder children rather than try to communicate. You chose to destroy a school rather than talk to us like civilized beings. You showed us that nothing has changed in 150 years. General Korax laughed. It was an ugly sound that made several smaller species hide behind their seats. What will Earth do about it? He asked. You have been hiding for 150 years. Your technology is old. Your ships are few. Your people have grown soft and weak. The Hegemony Alliance controls 17 spiral arms. We have 1,000 worlds under our rule. What can one small planet do to us? Chen smiled for the first time since entering the hall. It was not a happy smile. General Thule, she said, you asked what Earth will do. We are going to remind you why the galaxy needed 150 years of peace after the last time we were involved in galactic politics. She turned to walk toward the great doors, but Counselor Veltar called out to her. Captain Chen, the old Kalani said, What does humanity want from us? Chen stopped walking. Without turning around, she spoke her final words to the council. We want nothing from you, she said. We gave you 150 years to show us that you could learn to be peaceful. Instead, you chose to kill our children. We accept your choice. Now you will live with the consequences. The great doors opened, and Captain Sarah Chen walked out of the council hall. Behind her, 847 species began to panic. Some called for immediate attacks on Earth. Others demanded that the hegemony be punished for starting a war. A few tried to contact their home worlds to prepare for what was coming. But in the front row, Councillor Veltar sat quietly in his chair. He remembered the last time humanity had been angry. He remembered what happened to the species that had made humans their enemies. Those species no longer existed. Admiral Jin Nakamura stood on the command deck of the deep space vessel Retribution. Through the massive window in front of him, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the black of space. Behind Earth, the sun cast light on the orbital platforms that surrounded humanity's homeworld. Most aliens would see only a few space stations around a single planet. They would think Earth looked weak and undefended. Admiral Nakamura smiled because he knew how wrong they would be. Admiral, called Commander Lisa Torres from her station. Long-range sensors show hegemony ships at the edge of the system. General Korax has brought a big fleet. Nakamura nodded. He had expected this. After Captain Chen delivered her message to the Galactic Council, war was certain. The hegemony could not allow humans to threaten them without responding. Their pride would not permit it. How many ships? Nakamura asked. 812, Torres replied. Battle cruisers, destroyers, fighter squadrons. They brought enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds. Nakamura laughed quietly. They think Earth is still the same as it was 150 years ago. They think we have been sleeping while they built their empire. He walked over to a display screen that showed the human defense grid. To enemy sensors, it would look like Earth had only 20 ships and a few dozen orbital platforms. The aliens would think humans were easy to defeat. They would learn otherwise very quickly. Commander Torres, Nakamura said, send a message to all human ships throughout the galaxy. Operation Homecoming begins now. Torres smiled as her fingers moved over her control panel. Around the galaxy, on 17 different worlds, human agents received their orders. Ships that had been hiding in asteroid fields for decades powered up their engines. Space stations that looked like mining platforms revealed their true purpose. Weapons that had been sleeping for 150 years came online. The hegemony was about to discover what humanity had been doing during their long silence. Nakamura walked to another station where Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka was monitoring galactic communications. Her screen showed messages flying between hundreds of worlds as news of the human return spread across space. What are they saying? Nakamura asked. Most species are afraid, Tanaka reported. The younger ones remember humans only from history books. But the older species remember the Liberation War. They are telling their governments to stay neutral. And the hegemony? General Korax is rallying his allies. He is telling them that humans are weak from hiding for so long. He says they will destroy Earth and then divide human technology among themselves. Nakamura shook his head. During the 150 years of isolation, humanity had not been idle. While other species fought wars over territory and resources, humans had been learning. They had sent secret ships to explore the dark spaces between stars. They had found the ruins of ancient civilizations. They had studied the remains of species that had destroyed themselves through endless conflict. Most importantly, they had been watching. Human sensors had recorded every battle, every new weapon, every tactical development for over a century. They knew how every species fought. They understood the strengths and weaknesses of every major military force in the galaxy. The hegemony thought they were attacking an isolated world. In reality, they were walking into a trap that had been 150 years in the making. "Admiral," Commander Torres called out. "Hegemony fleet is moving toward Earth. General Corax is demanding our surrender." "Put him on screen," Nakamura ordered. General Corax appeared on the main display. His armor looked even more impressive than it had in the council chambers. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship showed hundreds of crew members preparing for battle. "Human Admiral," Corax said, his voice full of confidence. "I am General Corax Thule of the Hegemony Alliance. You will surrender your world immediately. Your ships will power down their weapons. Your people will submit to hegemony rule. If you comply, we will allow some of your species to live as slaves." Nakamura looked at the general with calm eyes. "General Thule," he said, "you destroyed a school. You killed children. Did you think there would be no consequences?" Corax laughed. "What consequences? You have 20 ships. I have 800. You have been hiding for 150 years while we built the greatest military force in galactic history. Surrender now, or watch your world burn." "I have a counteroffer," Nakamura said. "Leave our system immediately. Return to your worlds. End your alliance with slavers and raiders. Learn to live in peace with your neighbors." "Or what?" Corax demanded. Nakamura smiled the same cold smile that Captain Chen had shown in the council chambers. "Or we will remind you why your ancestors needed 150 years to recover after the last time they fought humans." Corax cut the communication link. A few minutes later, his fleet moved toward Earth at full speed. 812 warships against 20 human vessels. The general was certain of victory. "All ships," Nakamura ordered over the human communication network. "Defensive positions. Remember, we are not just defending Earth. We are showing the galaxy what happens to those who hurt innocents." Around Earth, the 20 visible human ships moved into formation. They looked small compared to the approaching hegemony fleet. Their weapons seemed weak. Their shields appeared thin. But deep in space, hundreds of other objects began to move. Asteroids that had hung motionless for decades suddenly changed course. Space dust that had drifted randomly for years started forming patterns. Even some of Earth's moons began shifting position. The hegemony sensors detected none of this. They were focused on the 20 ships they could see clearly. They did not notice the thousands of objects that had been hiding in plain sight for over a century. "General Corax has taken the bait," Commander Torres reported. "His ships are entering the defense grid." Nakamura nodded. "Signal all hidden platforms. Begin Phase 1. Across the Earth system, objects that had looked like space debris for decades revealed their true nature. Asteroid mining stations turned out to be weapon platforms. Orbital research facilities opened hidden missile bays. Even Earth's smaller moons split open to reveal massive gun batteries. On his flagship, General Corax watched his sensors in growing confusion as over 3,000 new targets appeared around his fleet. "What is this?" he shouted at his crew. "Where did these come from?" His sensor officer was too frightened to speak. The hegemony fleet, which had seemed so powerful a moment before, was now surrounded by more firepower than existed on most worlds. Admiral Nakamura opened a communication channel to all ships in the system. "General Corax," he said. "Welcome to Earth." General Corax stared at his tactical display in shock. Red dots surrounded his fleet on all sides. Thousands of weapon platforms had appeared, from nowhere. His sensors could not understand how so many military installations had hidden in the Earth system. "This is impossible," he said to his bridge crew. "Our intelligence reports showed Earth had minimal defenses. Where did these weapons come from?" "Asmin. Our Tepsin." His sensor officer checked his equipment 3 times before answering. "Sir, they were there all along. Our sensors read them as asteroids, space debris, and research stations. But they are all armed. Heavily armed. Heavily armed. Heavily armed. Heavily armed. Heavily armed, Korax felt fear for the first time in decades. His 800 ships seemed small now. The humans had turned their entire star system into a weapon. All ships, he ordered, attack formation, target the human vessels and fire at will. The hegemony fleet opened fire with everything they had. Beams of energy and streams of missiles flew toward the 20 human ships that hung in space around Earth. But the human ships moved like nothing Korax had ever seen before. They flowed around the incoming fire like water moving around stones. Their engines made no sound but pushed them in directions that should have been impossible. Some ships seemed to disappear entirely, only to reappear behind hegemony vessels. "How are they moving like that?" Korax demanded. "Unknown, sir," his tactical officer replied. "Their technology does not match anything in our databases." On the Retribution, Admiral Nakamura watched the battle with calm eyes. Human ships danced between enemy fire, using technology that had been developed during the long isolation. Engines that bent space itself. Shields that redirected energy rather than absorbing it. Weapons that could target specific systems without destroying entire ships. Phase 2. Nakamura ordered. Around the Earth system, the hidden platforms began to fire. But they did not try to destroy the hegemony ships. Instead, their weapons targeted engines, weapon systems, and communication arrays. One by one, enemy vessels found themselves unable to fight, unable to move, and unable to call for help. General Korax watched his mighty fleet being taken apart like a child's toy. His ships were not being destroyed. They were being captured. The humans were fighting with precision that seemed impossible. "Sir," his communication officer called out, "we are receiving signals from 17 different star systems. Human forces have appeared at all our major worlds." Korax felt his heart stop. "What do you mean, appeared?" "Ships we have never seen before, sir. They are not attacking our colonies. They are attacking our slave camps. They are freeing our workers and loading them onto transport vessels." On the tactical display, Korax could see what was happening across hegemony space. Human ships had somehow traveled instantly to every world where his people kept slaves. They were not conquering planets. They were liberating them. Admiral Nakamura opened a communication channel to the hegemony flagship. His face appeared on Korax's main screen. "General," Nakamura said calmly, "your fleet is defeated. Your slave camps are being emptied. Your alliance is falling apart as we speak. I am giving you one chance to surrender." Korax's pride would not let him give up. "Never. The hegemony does not surrender to anyone." "Very well," Nakamura replied. The Admiral made a gesture to someone off-screen. Suddenly, new information appeared on Korax's displays. Data streams showed him exactly what the humans had been doing for 150 years. They had not been hiding in fear. They had been studying every species in the galaxy. They knew how hegemony ships were built because they had watched them being constructed. They understood Brakari military tactics because they had recorded every battle the hegemony had ever fought. They had spent over a century learning the weaknesses of every major power in galactic space. But more than that, they had been preparing. While other species fought over territory, humans had been building a fleet in the dark spaces between stars. While empires expanded through conquest, humanity had been developing technology that made their old ships look like stone tools. "You see, General," Nakamura continued, "we did not spend 150 years sleeping. We spent them learning. We studied every war, every conflict, every act of cruelty committed in this galaxy. We prepared for the day when we would have to come home." On worlds throughout hegemony space, the liberation continued. Human ships arrived at slave camps and mining colonies. But they did not simply attack the guards. They broadcasted messages in hundreds of languages, telling slaves how to reach safety. They provided food and medicine to workers who had been starving. They gave hope to beings who had forgotten what freedom felt like. And when hegemony forces tried to stop them, the human ships showed the same impossible skill they demonstrated at Earth. They moved too fast to hit. They struck too precisely to avoid. They fought like they could read their enemies' minds. General Corax realized the truth too late. Humanity had not been absent from galactic politics for 150 years. They had been watching galactic politics for 150 years. They knew everything about everyone. They had seen which species chose to be slavers and which species chose to be victims. They had prepared accordingly. "Your ship is surrounded, General," Nakamura said. "Your engines are disabled. Your weapons are offline. Your communication systems will work only when I allow them to. I am offering you a choice." Corax said nothing. His armor felt heavy on his shoulders. "You can remain as my prisoner," Nakamura continued. "You will be treated well according to the laws of war. You will be fed and given medical care and kept safe until this conflict ends." "Or," Corax asked, "or you can return to what remains of hegemony space with a message. You can tell your allies exactly what you have seen here today. You can explain to them what happens when someone chooses to hurt human children." Corax looked around his bridge. His crew was frightened. His ship was helpless. His empire was crumbling as human forces liberated world after world. "What message?" he asked quietly. Admiral Nakamura leaned forward on his command chair. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of an entire species' determination. "Tell them that the children of Earth are coming home. Tell them that we are not returning as conquerors or rulers. We are returning as protectors. Tell them that anyone who chooses to prey on the innocent will answer to humanity." The communication ended. General Corax sat in his command chair, surrounded by the wreckage of his pride. Outside his ship, human vessels waited patiently for his decision. Across the galaxy, the news spread quickly. Earth had returned to galactic politics. And this time, they were not asking for permission. 6 months had passed since the battle at Earth. The Great Hall of Nexus Prime looked different now. Where once 847 species had held seats, now over 1,200 different peoples gathered together. The new arrivals were species that had been considered too primitive or too weak to join the old council. Former slaves sat beside their former masters. Ancient enemies shared the same air. Captain Sarah Chen walked through the great doors once again. But this time, she was not alone. Admiral Nakamura walked beside her, wearing the simple blue uniform of Earth's Space Force. Behind them came representatives from dozens of worlds that had been liberated during Operation Homecoming. At the center of the group walked an elderly Thraxian woman named Keeper Sana. Her people had been slaves for so long that most of the galaxy had forgotten they could speak. Now she carried herself with the dignity of someone who remembered freedom. Ambassador Kale stood at the central podium, but his blue skin looked pale and tired. The Zephyrian Confederation had lost much of its power when 3 of their member worlds chose to leave and join the new alliance that was forming around humanity. "The Council recognizes Captain Chen of Earth," Kale said with little enthusiasm. Chen stepped forward to the center of the Great Hall. She looked around at all the different species watching her. Some faces showed hope. Others displayed fear. A few revealed anger at the changes that had come to their galaxy. "Members of the Galactic Council," Chen began, her voice as calm as it had been 6 months earlier. "Earth returns to galactic politics with a proposal. We ask you to consider joining a new alliance based on 3 simple principles." She gestured to a holographic display that appeared above the central stage. 3 words appeared in the languages of every species present: protection, cooperation, growth. "First," Chen said, "we propose absolute protection of the innocent. No more slavery, no more attacking civilian targets, no more genocide. Any species that commits these acts will face the combined response of the entire alliance." Murmurs rose from the assembled delegates. Some sounded supportive, others seemed worried about what this would mean for their own governments. Second, we propose cooperation instead of conquest. Rather than fighting over resources, we will share them. Rather than competing for territory, we will explore it together. Rather than building walls between our peoples, we will build bridges. The murmurs grew louder. Many species had never imagined working together as equals. Third, Chen continued, we propose growth through learning. Every species has something to teach others. Every culture has knowledge that could benefit everyone. We will share our discoveries, our art, our science, and our wisdom. An old voice called out from the front row. Councillor Veltar slowly stood up from his seat. At 400 years old, he had become one of the most respected members of the council. Captain Chen, he said, these principles sound wonderful. But how do we know Earth will not simply become the new ruler of the galaxy? You have shown us your strength. How do we know you will not use it to control us? Chen smiled and stepped aside. Admiral Nakamura walked forward to answer. Councillor Veltar, the Admiral said. 6 months ago, human forces could have conquered every major world in this galaxy. We chose not to. We freed slaves instead of taking new ones. We removed dictators instead of becoming new ones. We returned power to local governments instead of claiming it for ourselves. He gestured to the group of delegates behind him. These representatives will tell you that humans asked for nothing in return for their liberation. We did not demand tribute. We did not claim territory. We did not even ask them to join our alliance. Keeper Sana stepped forward. When she spoke, her voice was strong despite her age. The humans came to Thraxis when my people had been slaves for 300 years. They broke our chains and gave us ships to return to our home world. They left immediately after, asking nothing. When we asked how we could repay them, they said, we should help others find freedom. A younger delegate from the Corvan Republic raised his hand. But what about the hegemony worlds? What happened to the species that supported General Korax? Admiral Nakamura nodded. A fair question. The Brakari people chose new leaders after General Korax was captured. Those leaders agreed to release all slaves and end their aggressive expansion. In return, we helped them rebuild worlds that had been damaged by centuries of war. Even species that fought against us were offered the same choice. Chen added. Join the alliance and follow its principles. Or remain independent but respect the rights of others. Most chose to join. A few chose independence. We respect both decisions. Ambassador Kale spoke up from the podium. And what of species that refuse both options? What if some choose to continue the old ways? Chen's voice became colder. Species that choose to practice slavery or commit genocide will face consequences. We made that clear at Earth. The Alliance exists to protect those who cannot protect themselves. A debate began among the assembled delegates. Some species worried about losing their independence. Others feared that the Alliance would become corrupt over time. Many asked detailed questions about how the new system would work. But gradually, a consensus began to form. Too many delegates had lived under the old system of endless war and exploitation. Too many had seen their people suffer while the strong preyed on the weak. The chance to build something better was worth the risk. Councillor Veltar called for quiet. When the great hall settled down, he spoke again. I have lived through 4 centuries of galactic history, the old Kalani said. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species destroy themselves through greed and violence. I have seen the cycle of conquest and revenge repeat itself again and again. He looked directly at Chen and Nakamura. But I have also seen what humans are capable of when they choose to protect rather than conquer. I was there during the Great Liberation War. I saw how human forces fought not for glory or territory, but for the freedom of strangers they had never met. The old counselor stood as straight as his aged body would allow. The Kalani delegation votes to join the Earth Alliance. One by one, other species announced their decisions. The Vraxians, who had been freed by humans centuries ago, voted yes immediately. The Thraxian people, represented by Keeper Sana, pledged their support. Former slaves and former victims lined up to join an alliance that promised to protect them. Some species chose to remain independent. A few demanded time to consider the proposal. But by the end of the day, over 800 worlds had agreed to join the new alliance. As the voting concluded, Chen addressed the council one final time. "To those who have chosen to join us," she said, "we welcome you as equals and friends. We will work together to build a galaxy where strength serves justice rather than greed." She looked at the species that had chosen independence. "To those who prefer to remain separate, we respect your choice. We ask only that you respect the rights of others to live in peace." Finally, she turned to the few delegates who had spoken against the alliance. "And to those who believe the old ways were better, we offer this warning. The children of Earth are home now. We will not allow a return to the age of slavery and conquest. Choose your path carefully." Admiral Nakamura stepped forward for the final statement. "The Earth Alliance does not seek to rule the galaxy. We seek to serve it. We return not as conquerors, but as guardians. We gave you 150 years to find peace on your own. Now we will spend the next 150 years building it together." As the Great Assembly ended, delegates began making plans for the future. Trade agreements were discussed. Cultural exchange programs were proposed. Joint exploration missions were planned. Standing at the great windows of Nexus Prime, Admiral Nakamura watched ships from hundreds of worlds working together to build something new. Cargo vessels carried supplies to recently liberated worlds. Medical ships brought aid to species that had been neglected under the old system. Research vessels prepared to explore the unknown regions of space as partners rather than rivals. Captain Chen joined him at the window. "Do you think it will work?" she asked. Nakamura smiled as he watched a human transport ship dock beside a former hegemony vessel. Crews from both ships worked together to transfer food and medicine to refugee ships. "It has to work," he said. "We gave the galaxy 150 years to prove it could live without us. It chose war and slavery instead. Now we have to prove that we can help it choose something better." With sentiment, in the distance, Earth hung in space like a blue promise of home. Around it, ships from 1,000 worlds traveled in peaceful formation. The children of Earth had returned to the galaxy. And this time, they were staying.